Hi everyone, this is Jed Shlackman. I'm a holistic counselor and spiritual energy healer. I share about many different topics related to healing and holistic wellness in my videos. And this current video is going to look at the metaphysical meaning of measles. As a preface to that, I want to explain that anything that's going on with our health, with our physical body, is in some way connected to patterns of consciousness. So the physical is not separate from the metaphysical. Body, mind, and spirit are all part of one unified feedback system. So we can explore what is the meaning or significance of any particular condition or symptoms that we're experiencing. Things aren't random. A particular person has a particular condition for particular reasons. Some of them are things that are causal on the physical level. Some of those causes or reasons are on the emotional and mental level. Some are on the spiritual level. So we want to consider all levels when we're pursuing healing. So there are things you can do physically to treat a particular condition or illness you have, but there are also things you can address that are on the metaphysical or non-physical consciousness level that would also facilitate healing. And sometimes it's essential really to work on both levels. So to get a complete healing or resolution, you might need to address the factors that are present on both levels. Now, for the metaphysical meaning of measles, I'll be reading an excerpt from a book that's kind of a dictionary or encyclopedia of mind-body connections. It's a book called Messages from the Body. This is the book. The Body's Desk Reference, and this is by Michael J. Lincoln, who is a psychologist. And he developed this information working through a whole lifetime with thousands of different clients and documenting all these different patterns. Not just him, but also colleagues of his, compiling all of their clinical experience and research to put into writing, in a sense, or codify what was observed in terms of these connections. And I'm going to read a little bit from the preface of this book, Messages from the Body, Their Psychological Meaning. And to start out, it says the author of this book, and I'll add to that myself as well, does not dispense medical advice or psychological recommendations or prescribe the use of any technique as a form of treatment for medical and psychological problems. Not in this context, obviously. If you're a psychologist and you're working with your own individual client, you might be prescribing a form of therapy. But as an educational video, as I'm doing here, or someone writing a book, they're not individually seeing the person listening or reading, so they're not presenting this educational material as a substitute for you getting some form of care from a qualified healthcare provider. The intent of this author is only to offer information of a general nature to help the enhancement of your well-being in your quest for effective functioning. In the event you use any of the information in this book for yourself, the author and publisher assume no responsibility for your decisions. And that goes for whatever you might be viewing on a YouTube video or other video content on the internet. You're responsible for integrating information that you're exposed to discerning what's right for you, what you want to apply in your life, and then that's your decision. People giving out information, they're not responsible for your choice. They're just sharing educational information. So the book Messages from the Body is by Michael J. Lincoln, PhD, and he actually wrote many books. He's passed on now, but in his lifetime he compiled a lot of information and wrote many books. And here at the introduction of this book, you see it's kind of the fundamental explanation of what all this information is representing and how you might apply it. He says, bodily functioning is a continuous adaptation process to our external and internal environments that is operated by the brain, which in turn reflects the contents of the mind, the emotions, and the soul. The key factor in the maintenance of bodily health is the immune system, which is controlled by the brain via neural connections, chemical reactions, neurotransmitters, lymphocytes, neurohormones, endorphins, and the like. Through these linkages, what's going on in our consciousness is continually affecting our body and vice versa. In many ways, the body and the mind imitate and imprint each other. Ultimately, of course, consciousness underlies and is the final determinant of everything, and the body reflects this vividly. It should be noted in this regard that consciousness will be used here to refer to both aware and unaware processes and phenomena, as well as what is happening in our brains and in our souls. What is in our consciousness is determined by our life experiences and by the nature and history of the soul. We design our destiny, and then we encounter the interaction between ourselves and the world around us, and we react to what happens. For instance, one way in which illnesses and such can happen is when the individual's life goals are not being met. The individual then feels so frustrated that bodily functioning goes awry. Their consciousness then becomes permeated with this process. So I'll pause at the introduction there so we can move ahead to the topic of measles and the metaphysical meaning of that particular condition or illness that people experience. So for measles, which it classifies as an infectious viral disease, so yes, there is a measles virus, and people displaying the symptoms of measles have an active infection with that virus, so that's part of the process of that illness. And here's what Lincoln has as the summary of what's being reflected by measles infections. Quote, "They're after me. They feel unsafe, betrayed, rejected, and attacked. They have concluded that they can't be themselves, and they are in grief about that. It is the outcome of a self-immersed family system who reacted to them on a convenience concern basis." So you can take a moment to process what that means. It seems to be saying that the person is not being validated just for being themselves. The family, he says, is reacting to them on a convenience concern basis. So the concern isn't really like an unconditional love kind of concern. It's what's convenient for the parents or for the family. And if it's not convenient to the family's prerogatives or objectives, then they're not really supporting that individual and allowing them to be themselves. So you'll find similar themes with a variety of other conditions or illnesses, but this is the specific terminology he shares to explain what's in the consciousness of a person who displays an active case of measles. If we think about infectious illnesses, we see some type of outbreak happen where this microbe, this infectious agent, in this case a virus, is spreading among people in a population, right? Well, not everyone's going to become ill even though they're exposed to it. So just because your body comes into contact with a particular virus or a particular bacteria, that doesn't mean it's going to proliferate in your body and create these symptoms of illness. A majority of people will process or handle that microorganism in a way where essentially it's contained or neutralized, and they're not going to display some form of illness that gets diagnosed. So just because you're exposed doesn't mean you're ever going to become ill from something. There are other factors involved that are governing what's happening with your body that would actually determine whether your body will interact with that microorganism in a way that leads to what doctors would call an active infection, where the symptoms of illness become present. So it helps to understand the consciousness aspect, the metaphysical meaning. If you can address that, you could actually rapidly dissipate an illness. If you could shift what's going on in the consciousness, then actually the energy system of that being, of that person, will shift, which leads to a change in the chemical activity in the body. The body will then be able to clear out that microorganism, clear out whatever debris or waste has been built up in the body, and the illness disappears. So that can happen if we're able to access the consciousness and heal whatever pattern or bring balance and harmony back from whatever disturbance may have been present. With these acute types of conditions, something like measles or having a cold or flu, these are short-term illnesses, so it may not be as evident that you can make the consciousness shift to eliminate or quote-unquote resolve an illness. But with more serious and long-term type illnesses, it often becomes more evident how important consciousness is in generating those conditions, and how a person's healing or resolving the psychological issue leads to a rapid resolution of the physical condition or diagnosis. So, for example, there are people that have somewhat spontaneous healings from cancer or from autoimmune illnesses, and that's often subsequent to some shift in consciousness that occurs. They might have had a breakthrough in releasing emotions or resolving past trauma, and then once that happens, their physical condition resolves itself without any additional medical type intervention. So we can see how vital the consciousness is in the manifestation of all kinds of illnesses. So it doesn't mean that you're going to not do any type of physiological intervention, but to achieve optimal healing, it's often critical to address this subconscious level, to address what's happening in the emotions, the mind, and the soul. I hope that this short video has given you some insights, some more holistic ways of looking at illness, in this case the measles illness, but this concept applies to all types of illnesses and conditions. For those that are interested in holistic health and wellness, I invite you to view my website, which is phinsights.com. That's phinsights.com. For now, I wish everyone a wonderful day. Namaste.